fiction, science fiction, horror, fantasy, crime, LGBT, thriller.
You have now entered the House of Mystery.
Welcome back into the House of Mystery. I'm Al Warren, and we've got Mr. Michael Hawley here. It must be a Wicked Wednesday. It must be. Hey, it is, isn't it?
That is correct, Al. It is.
Yeah, whenever we're on Wednesdays, it's Wicked, you know.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Speaking of that, so I noticed you made the news the other day. You know?
Oh, who, me?
Yeah. I mean, I did. All that whiskey, you know, all that. What was this? Sammy Hagar had that shipment of whiskey that he was making with Guy Fieri, and someone stole it. $1 million worth of whiskey, and I thought for sure it was you.
Well, I can neither confirm nor deny that. That's how we say that in our business.
Yeah, I happened to notice that you happen to be missing for the week, and I thought, well, I wonder what you're doing, and all of a sudden this whiskey gets lifted. Oh,
there's a correlation between me being missing and the whiskey, but then I'm a fine lager lover. That's the only thing. But I know what's going on.
25 is going to be the year of Hawley whiskey. You're going to be selling it out the back door.
Yeah.
I know.
We have Hawley hops going on for fine lagers and Hawley whiskey.
What a great story prompt.
Yeah,
see,
that's it. You see, and that's how we tie things in, because we've got a mystery writer here who actually made the plans for the theft of the whiskey, and that's how we got together, sir. So, anyway, we'll be talking about his new series that he's starting here, and this is book 1 of the Zack Taylor series, and it's A Memory of Grief. So, Dale T. Phillips, thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you, Alan and Michael. Hello.
Yeah.
Hello.
Well, listen, Dale, what caused such pain that you got into the writing world? Like, what was the source of all of this terrible stuff?
Wasn't it Hemingway who said the best preparation for a writer is an unhappy childhood?
Yeah, exactly. It's just like who hurt you? Where did it start? Like, what?
Actually, I do have to blame Stephen King, and a great part of it, because I took writing classes from him in college. And he was so inspirational, knowledgeable about, the craft of writing, always saying, get better, never stop trying to get better, work a lot, get out the stories that you need to. And I really hadn't thought of being a professional writer at this time. And, of course, life intervened for many years, raising a family and things. But in 2011, I got my first book out, which is A Memory of Grief, the first novel in my Zack Taylor series. And then I've got about 34 books since then, so off and running, as they say.
I'll say.
So weren't you starstruck?
No.
Starstruck when you had...
Yes, but I was too young and green to realize how starstruck I should have been. But yeah, it was sitting in his living room while he's editing your story is like the wicked coolest thing that you can do in Maine. Absolutely.
Wow.
And that's Stephen King. Is that spelt with a V? I'll look him up.
P-H.
Yeah, I've never heard of him before, so I'll...
Yeah, a regional writer up in Maine, yeah.
Yeah,
that's right.
Just an indie, but that's okay. Indies are good, Anyway, so listen, what is the Zack Taylor mystery series? Like, let's talk about Zack Taylor. Who is Zack Taylor, first of all?
Zack Taylor is a man who, because of a past tragedy, doesn't like guns or use them. However, in his current profession, he runs up against people who do use them. So he's got to rely on his wits and his physical skills to stay alive. And he's like a bull in a china shop, always charging in, causing trouble. The past tragedy sent him into alcoholism, and he's only avoiding it now by absolutely abstaining, 100%. But he's so close to being off the rails at all times, you always wonder when the scales are going to tip and he's going to go just off and do too much. He's not too terribly concerned about the law. He got in trouble with the law before, a very short prison term, and so he can't get a professional PI license, but he tries to help people, and in doing so, he tries to make himself a better person.
And did he steal a shipment of whiskey?
No, but he does find illicit piles of cash from bad people, and he's not averse to taking that for himself. He's a lot like Travis McGee in the Johnny McDonald series. I mean, he's more of a rusty knight errant and more flawed, but he's not above taking a pile of cash when it's there and using it for good.
So I wonder then, like when you get Zack Taylor and you're writing Zack Taylor and you're thinking about the dialogue and how you're writing him, are you a writer that hears Zack Taylor, or do you see him, feel him, and all that sort of thing? Or what is your relationship with Zack?
Absolutely. I grew up in the school starting with, Raymond Chandler, Dashiell Hammett, Johnny McDonald, Jim Thompson, even Mickey Spillane, Robert B. Parker. That school of, not over-the-top tough guy, but that world that they created. And you become so immersed in that world that, yes, I know, I can hear Zack. I don't see him, when they say casting, I'm not sure, who they'd cast. But he is a person with a code. And if anybody crosses that line, that's bad for them. That's going to set him off. I mean, he has this rage that he's tried to tamp down and keep in control over the years, but it doesn't always work. And sometimes, even when he's trying to help people, people get hurt. It's the law of unintended consequences. And that makes him feel more guilty, which just adds to his burden. He's got a lot of ghosts.
Well, he's still considered a protagonist and not an antagonist.
Oh, yes, very much so.
Now, how much of yourself do you think's in that? Or is this a way of living out a character that you would like to be?
That's a great question. I was at a writer conference, and a few of us were gathered, and someone said, a lot of mystery writers put themselves in as the protagonist in their first book. Like here's Hank Phillippe Ryan, an investigative journalist. Here's Paul Duran, who loves the outdoors and is that. And here's Steve Ulfelder, who writes about, race cars and is this tough guy. And then they turn to me and they say, so how about you? I go, I write about an alcoholic ex-con who's full of rage.
Then you go, and okay.
Conversation just stops. And they look at you and go, okay.
Yeah. My phone's ringing. I've got to go.
Yeah. Oh, look over there, shrimp.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of interesting. Are you writing it from his point of view then in the series, or you?
Yes, absolutely. It's first person, like the great classic. Well, I say PI novels. He's kind of an amateur PI, of course, unlicensed, but he's an investigator.
So he has a reputation then. That's why he's getting.
Yes, Travis McGee was a salvage consultant, and Zack is a security consultant.
Well, there you go. Now, so did you create the character of Zack and maybe some of your other characters like, Ben Sterling and stuff first, and then create what happens to them and develop the stories, or do you kind of have stories and then you create these guys?
Right. Since it was my first novel, I had the setting. I always wanted to feature Portland. So many of the classic detectives are Boston, New York, Chicago, L.A., yada, yada. And I'm like, how about Portland as a setting? Because it's beautiful, it's mysterious, it's got everything, and it's not as well known to everybody outside of New England. I mean, a lot of people have visited, but it's featured, and Zack is a complete fish out of water when he comes there. He doesn't have any connections. He's not a fan of the police, and they're not a fan of him. And he doesn't know anybody, and he's got to try to crack a case where he's totally at sea. And I came up with a character. I said, okay, I want to feature Portland. I want a man investigating the death of a friend. And then I started tracing it back and went, okay, so yeah, I don't want to use guns because in so much of detective and mystery fiction, somebody whips out a gun and all the problems are solved. They get into danger, boom, out comes the gun, boom, they're safe. I'm like, that's so boring. And it's not realistic because, again, in my life, I haven't been in any situations where a gun has solved anything of that nature. So I wanted that. So the character began to develop, and I had to go into the backstory of why that is so. What would make a person drop everything, from their life and go investigate the death of a friend? And what was that friend like? And what would induce them? And how would they react to situations? How would they get by in the world? And it all comes from that.
Do you find it easy to do the flashbacks or when you go back into someone's history and so that it doesn't confuse a reader?
Yes, very much so. All my books are standalones in the series. It's nicer if you read them because, there are some references, but no one's going to get lost, definitely, because each story is self-contained and they can just enjoy it as a cracking good action yarn, but there's layers to it, very much so.
You don't know Michael. You can get lost.
Got some whiskey for you to sell. By here.
And when you talk action and you talk that, how is the violence ratio in this? Would you consider this hard-boiled all the way to, cozy? Like, where would you put this in the violent action sort of area?
Yes, I have written a semi-cozy mystery. This is more towards the hard-boiled and the noir, but, there's not excessive gore, but he does get into fights, yeah, and sometimes people do get hurt. So I'd say, don't read this if you're if you like ladies knitting and solving crimes and having tea and have cats and don't like anybody being in a fight. But if you do like that school, the one I mentioned, all those writers, you're going to love this because, man, you get involved in that world, and the violence is necessary. But it does leave a stain on people, and that's what I get across in the book. It's like, it's never a good thing, and people do get hurt. It's got consequences. Right.
It's that sort of like when you were putting this together, the story, and you get Zack, and you got your band and all this stuff going on. And by the time you finished the story, did some sort of subtext come out of that story? Some sort of meaning?
Well, it does have meaning because everything, the theme of the book is also part of the cover and the title, because this one is a memory of grief, comes to us from the Epic of Gilgamesh, the oldest story that we know in our race. And it's about Gilgamesh, who's the king, and the gods give him a friend, and they have adventures together, but the friend is killed. And when that happens, Gilgamesh goes completely off the rails. And, reading that quote about, Gilgamesh, about what happens to him, that's the idea of the book. And I'm like, oh, man, that's great. The theme goes all together. And so each one in the series is the same thematically. They come from quotes from literature, Emily Dickinson, Nathaniel Hawthorne, the Bible, etc. And that's the theme of the book as well.
With being so involved, do you find that the process of writing one of these books has an effect on you itself?
Well, I'm always trying to be a better person, and I know I'm flawed.
You've been in prison.
What you said can neither confirm nor deny, Michael. But try to show that there are people who don't live the normal daytime lifestyle, right? This is a night person. He understands the people of the night, those who dwell in there, good and bad. He gets that world, and he's a little more comfortable in that world. He's a little at odds with, people who raise families and go on picnics and have nice interactions during the day. That's just not his style because he's always lived in the shadows. He's always, because of his guilt and his rage, he's always tried to avoid a lot of entanglements. He finds that when he's there, he starts developing, feelings for other people and, getting these new friendships and getting these relationships. He's becoming a different person.
In this series, you have to keep kind of complete knowledge of everything he's done in the past. So have you ever forgotten anything? And then some reader goes, oh, by the way, this guy had blue eyes or something like this.
Well, that's why I don't drill into a perfect physical description because, again, when they do the movie, they'll change Jack Reacher from 6'5" to 5'6", things like that. But the characters stay the same. But yes, things do change. And if somebody asks a question, I'm like, oh, gee, was that in book 3 or book 4? I got to go back and check. You change one detail, like he had a briefcase, and it went from leather to aluminum, and I had to go back 8 chapters and change the things. You have to make sure of that. So you have to keep your story Bible straight for your series, definitely. You've got to know who did what and when in what time sequence. And haven't had any issues with that because they're so tightly plotted that, it doesn't sprawl and you keep control of it.
Some people actually have a Bible or some sort of a guide and they write everything in there about their characters.
Yeah, I'm not one for these, Byzantine complex 160 characters and, everything's so twisted and in a rebus that you can't ever figure it out. Mine are fairly simple plot-wise of who's bad, who's good, and what's going to happen here. But it's the story. I mean, character is the story. What happens to them and the people around them, and what that changes for them and the world.
So you're not the person that sits down and writes every day at like 9 to 11, and you're all outlined and organized and all that. You're more just sit down when you're in the mood and write.
Yeah, I know. I wish I had more discipline, but I am the laziest, sloppiest person around, and I recommend people who want to be successful that they try to write every day, or at least more often. But yes, I'm a believer in the muse, and I know a lot of people are against that. But for me, if the muse comes and taps you on the shoulder and says, by the way, you need to do this, you do it. I mean, at one point I was working on 3 different books at once, and boy, was that mind-blowing. And sometimes, you finish one and something else comes along. You just got to listen to the muse, because that's where the good stuff is. Stephen King called it going down to the Jungian myth pool with a bucket. And you dip your bucket into that deep, dark pool of water. And you don't even know what's in there, but you bring it up to the sunlight, and then you see what you've got. It's your subconscious, and that's where the really good stuff is. So I'm not just cranking this out to get a word count. When I'm writing, everything's got to matter. There's not a lot of fluff. That's what Elmore Leonard said. Leave out the parts that people skip. Yeah, and the better stuff comes that way. I think you've got to write it down, too. When it comes, and you just got to write it down and get it down, and you can fix up later, anything you need to. Absolutely.
Right? Otherwise, you forget. People like to think that, I'll remember that. But you don't. You miss out on details, I think.
Yeah, and I've got lists of story ideas. I've got over 500 story ideas that I have to get writing. I've published about 80, more than 80, but I need to get so many more out. Let's hope we last long enough.
Those short stories?
Short stories, all different genres, right. Everything. Crime and mystery, the scary stuff, a la Stephen King. Also some science fiction, some fables and fantasies, a little bit of things like that. So
that's insane. Did you ever think it would go this wild, where you're doing so much writing?
Wow. I really didn't. But once I started, like I say, it was just like, Katie barred the door, because it's so much fun. This writing life is great. I mean, I get to talk to people and, fans and other writers, and I get to go to shows and conferences and give presentations and workshops and just have so much fun at this. It's like, wow, like Robert Heinlein said, who invented this racket?
Yeah, really. When you write, what time period do you like to write in? What's going on with this case?
Wow. Well, the series is set in kind of like 1990s Portland. I'm starting to update a little bit. He used to use payphones, and now he's got a cell phone to make things a little more convenient.
Wow.
But all my other stuff is all wildly different, time frames. I love historical, so Michael, I'm going to check out your stuff definitely.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, but I think you're going to go into the Blackberries soon, right? So, and then you got to remember to get rid of
those. You'll have a pager on.
It was good. It was funny. I saw a post there just the other day online, and someone was talking about payphones, and some younger person was saying, "I can't believe you guys would walk around. You would talk on those. They must be gross and full of germs." And it was just like, I didn't even think about it. We all talked on the payphones. It's just things change and you don't realize it,
And when you had to meet somebody out in the woods, there was no safety net whatsoever.
That's right. Why didn't they just phone? Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and so it's the 90s time period. And Portland, Maine, do you write that like a character? Do people read it like a character, like a person?
Oh, very much so. The setting is critical to who Zack is becoming and the life around. Because, again, it's got so many different things going on. It's got working class, it's got rich yuppies coming in, it's got historical, it's got some, laid-back Mainers, it's got everything, and people of all strata of society. And that's what I'm trying to show. Zack is able to maneuver between these strata and deal with them, whereas a lot of people, would not have the kind of skills he does. an ability to tell when somebody's lying and to just doggedly follow people until something breaks. If he thinks someone's guilty, he's just going to shadow them and see where they go and who they talk to. And when he talks to them, he'll know if they're lying or not. And that's how he gets his information.
Now, when you've got all 6 books of this done of Zack, when you started this, is Zack now, after 6 books, where you thought he was going to be?
Well, I didn't really have an arc for him. I mean, I got the first book done and then realized, this has got to be a series. And each one just comes organically. I don't write it until I've got that theme, that idea for what it's about. And when I have that, a lot of times that's the opening. And sometimes I'll know the ending, and it's getting from point A to Z, but not always. And again, there's all that good stuff in the middle. So has he progressed the way I wanted? I did not really plan his full arc. No, it's book by book.
Okay, so you didn't have it in mind of where he would. Are you happy with how he's turned out after 6 books?
Oh boy, I tell you, absolutely. I'm working on book 7 now, and it's just like, wow, this is great. I don't know how long it's going to last. I mean, even MacDonald ended Travis McGee at a point, and Conan Doyle tried to kill off Sherlock Holmes and everything. I'm like, yeah, we'll see how long it goes. He is getting too old now for the physical stuff, and I put that in there. He was a kickboxer, and now he's finding that he's just slowed down a touch, and he's not as good as he used to be. And that's important to the story, too. As we all age, we lose some of our speed.
Like
those can be dangerous.
Like those Lethal Weapon movies. First one, he's the butt kicker, but the fourth one, he's not.
Yeah, there's coming a point where Zack's going to have to rely on something else. He might need a young sidekick or something to do his dirty work. Well, that's one thing he doesn't have. So much of the detective fiction has that lethal sidekick. I mean, Robert Craze has it. James Lee Burke has a lethal sidekick. And so many of them. Harlan Coben had a lethal sidekick for his Myron Bolitar stuff. And it's the guy who, and Easy Rollins had Mouse. It's the guy who will kill at the drop of a hat and always be there to back you up. And, you can always trust 100%, and they always shoot straight. And I'm like, that's kind of lazy for me. I can't do anything that easy. Zack's got to get himself out of trouble, not rely on somebody showing up with a gun at the right time.
There's got to be a personality connection too, right? Sometimes, and it's hard. It's hard to do that. So what's going on now? How many books are you writing on in a moment? Like, because you do a lot. Like you're writing all the time. It sounds like. So, what have you got going on now?
I have book 7 in the Zack Taylor series, and I was hoping to get that out by Christmas, but life has just been too busy in the months leading up. And I've also got a book of poetry coming out.
Oh. Wow.
Oh, nice.
I've got some other people I know who did theirs, and I went back and looked through my files and went, hey, I've published some poetry before, and wait, there's actually enough here. Great, let's get that out. I mean, there's no illusions. It's definitely not going to be a bestseller, but it's just one more, tool in the box to put out there. And then I have several novels planned for next year, but I'd say most of them are pretty ambitious and seem maybe above my skill set. But that's the good part is I'm always trying to stretch myself. I don't want to keep doing the same thing over and over. I always want to make it better. But when you've done your absolute best on the last book, getting better than that is a tough gig.
Do you have beta readers to help you on that path?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, beta readers. And I have an editor, superb editor, and believe that all writers really need an editor.
Oh, yeah.
The one real exception, but Harlan Ellison is gone, so we won't talk about that. So
no, and even then, it's always good to have something. It's good to have that at least one to bounce things off and to go things, and they can bring up.
Yeah, just hey, you missed it. Oh wait, did I? Oh wow. It's funny because with A Memory of Grief, I took it to a writing group, and I must have rewritten that first chapter over a dozen times, and I'm like, nope. But that was good. And since I've moved past that and don't need that, because now I have the voice, I have the action, I know how to begin a book, where to begin a book. And in fact, I teach writing, to other people and do a lot of manuscript critiques because I've sat with agents and editors and publishers when they're critiquing somebody's pitch. And so I know what they're looking for, what they're definitely trying to avoid, and how to really hook them and get that opening and grab them and keep them reading and turning the pages and keeping things flowing properly.
It's called handcuffs. No.
Yes, handcuffs.
Yeah, that's right.
Now you're going to hear my
Yeah,
pitch.
you're not leaving until this is done. Listen, so are you all over social media? Do you have a website? How do you like readers to find you?
Very much so. I have my long-term website. I've had a blog since 2009, I think. I'm on Facebook. I'm now off Twitter, over on Blue Sky. I'm actually on LinkedIn now, too. Now that I, quote, retired from my day job back in June, I switched my profile over to be all author stuff on LinkedIn. And I know that's different, but I still have over 500 connections there, so it's a place for people to find. I also have a bunch of craft articles in Killer Nashville magazine that they put out every so often, and I've had a lot of articles in there. But again, my website and my blog are the best places to find out what's going on currently. And of course, Facebook for the new stuff too. Like tomorrow night, I'm doing a book sale locally, which is their Christmas fair. So I just sit at a little desk and go, "Hi, local author here," and people are buying their trinkets for Christmas, and they go, "Oh, books, that would make a nice gift." Yes, it would.
Now, do they know that local author was on Jeopardy?
They do not until they ask. I mean, they have to read the bio. I do have a nice little pamphlet, a trifold, which has a little bio in the back, and if they read that, they'll find out. But I don't lead with. I lead with the Stephen King stuff, but not with the Jeopardy stuff. So.
Well, fantastic. Well, we're going to have your website, book, everything up there so people can find it easily and they don't have to search.
Wonderful. Thank you.
And, of course, we've been talking about your Zack Taylor mysteries, and all 6 books are out. The first one was The Memory of Grief, and we've been talking to Dale T. Phillips. So thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Well, nice speaking with you, Dale.
Big fan of the show, and now I gotta track down Michael's works too. So.
This has been a production of the House of Mystery Radio Show. To find out more about our show, guests, or hosts, go to our website at houseofmysteryradio.com.